I welcome you to today's community talk show. This talk show is brought to you by CCG, that is Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for today. My name is Lake Fancy. I'm an advocate, I'm a tax consultant, and a lecturer. Now, today we are discussing two topics. These are issues of contention right now in the country. The first topic that we are discussing today is issues of the closure of CSOs. How has the closure of CSOs affected your work? We are going to discuss this topic today. The second topic that we are looking at today is the unsolved land question in Uganda, which is also an issue that is an issue of contention right now in Uganda. With me, I have 4 panelists who are going to discuss with us this topic, and as well, I have audience who are attending this Zoom discussion, and we will have the audience join in later on to ask questions and also give their input about the 2 topics that we are discussing today. Now, the 4 panelists that I have today, the first panelist is Pamela Lakidi Achan. She is the Executive Director of Uganda Land Alliance. Pamela, you can put your video on. Yeah, your video is on. You can greet us in a minute.
Thank you so much, Fancy. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this very important discussion. My name is Pamela Lakidi Achan. I'm representing the Uganda Land Alliance in the capacity of Executive Director. I think that is enough for now.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and we are happy to have you with us. The second panelist today, we have Mr. Unen Moses. Unen Moses is Advocacy Officer at Land Rights at Pelham, Uganda. Moses.
Thank you, Fancy, and thank you, our viewers and the participants. As already introduced, I'm called Moses Unen. I work for Participatory Ecological Land Use Management, that is Pelham in Uganda, and the Land Rights Officer. I'm glad to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses, and we are happy to have you with us. Our third panelist for today is Kazimura Alice. She is the Executive Director of Akindo Integrated Women Development Agency, in short, Kawida, in Bulisa District. Alice, you're welcome.
You're most welcome. I am Kazimura Alice, working for Akindo Integrated Women Development Agency. I'm glad to be in this Zoom meeting today, the webinar. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. And Alice, we are happy to have you with us today. Our fourth panelist for today is Angole Jane. She is a land rights advocate in Dokolo District. I welcome you, Jane, to this discussion. Yes, Jane, you can unmute and put your video on and greet us.
Jane, you need to click that red icon down there, which looks like a microphone. Then it unclicks, so you're able to speak to us. Thank you.
Okay, as we wait for Jane to sort out that technical issue, she is online with us. We shall have her in a bit. Jane, you just have to unmute, click the button with the microphone, and that will unmute you, and also click the one that reads stop video, video. Just press on it, it will put your video on, and then you can be able to speak to us. Okay, as she sorts that out, we will have her in a bit. So like I introduced earlier, we are talking about 2 topics today. We are talking about the closure of CSOs. How has this affected the work of the CSOs? And with us, we have 2 CSO leaders who will discuss that topic for us. And also the second topic, which is the unsolved land question in Uganda. Now, let me give an introduction to the issue of the closure of CSOs in Uganda. Now, on 20th of August 2021, the National Bureau for Non-Governmental Organization, that is the NGO Bureau, which falls under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, halted the operation and indefinitely suspended 54 NGOs. The Bureau stated that this was due to non-compliance with the NGO Act of 2016. Now, to break this down, 23 of the NGOs were suspended because of operating with expired permits, contrary to Section 31.1 and 32.1 of the NGO Act 2016. The Bureau also stated that 15 of the NGOs failed to file annual returns and audited books of accounts to the NGO Bureau, contrary to Section 39.2 and 3 of the NGO Act and other non-compliance issues. And lastly, the Bureau stated that 16 of the NGOs were operating without registering with the NGO Bureau, contrary to Section 29.1 and 39.1 and 31.2 of the NGO Act of 2016. Now, this led to their to some NGOs being indefinitely suspended and their work altered. Now, we are going to discuss that topic in a bit with Pamela and Moses. And then at a later time, we are also going to discuss the land question with the 4 panelists. As we know, the Constitution provides for, in Article 237.1, it provides that land belongs to the citizens of Uganda, and it shall vest in accordance with land tenure systems. And in Uganda, there are 4 land tenure systems which are provided under the law. We have the customary land tenure system, we have the freehold land tenure system, we have the Milo land tenure system, and lastly, we have the leasehold land tenure system. Now, our panelists today will help us and unpackage all those land systems and the problems associated with them. Now, to start with the question of the CSOs, I would like to direct my first question to Pamela on issues of the closure of the CSOs. What is your take? Government alleges that these NGOs, they fail to comply with some sections of the NGO Act of 2016. Do you think that the issue was failure of compliance, or you think there were other issues that the government had with the NGOs? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fancy, for giving, first of all, the background to the closure of NGOs in Uganda. And before I go to whether I think the reasons that government has brought forth are the real ones or there's something else, I'd like to say that the closure of CSOs has a very long background. There were other things that happened even before government moved to close CSOs, and one of the major ones was the issue with the DGF, which is sort of a CSO but much larger, and that troubled the nation. The issues were unresolved, and up to date, we have not yet come to a clear conclusion of what that matter is and where it will end. Then the closure of the CSOs came in. Similarly, according to me, I think the process was not very transparent and probably not given enough time, because I would expect government to follow specific procedures, even in closing. The reasons that are given are technically valid, that if an NGO is operating without a permit, an NGO is not submitting annual returns and audited books of accounts, operating without, the reasons are very valid. But the question is their closure the solution? That is a question that has not been answered. Secondly, if we went into analyzing the kind of NGOs that have been suspended or brought to halt their operations, what kind of NGOs are these? And to what extent have they contributed to the national development of our country? Those questions are unanswered. And in view of that, anybody would begin to think that maybe the reasons for closure are not just the technical reasons that government is presenting, but something else and something beyond that. Otherwise, we would have expected to see time being availed to these NGOs, engagements with these NGOs, especially on the basis of their positive contributions to the development of this country. So that is how I would approach this, that while government is giving us a position which is technically valid, but the process, the procedure, the approach to the implementation of what is government's mandate and role leaves a lot of questions in everybody's mind, not just CSOs, but the entire population. So I'd say that, and thank you. Maybe Moses would like to add on that. Thank you, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for that take. Let me bring Moses into the discussion. So Moses, do you think there was any justification in the suspension of the NGOs by the NGO Bureau?
Thank you, the moderator, and my colleagues from the civil society organizations and our viewers. Actually, by the time the government announced the closure, the suspension of these NGOs, to me, it wasn't new. It wasn't something new. If you have been engaging in this space of the civic space, the shrinking space, then it would not be something new. Why do I say so? It's because we have, as a country, already a history to this. It's not the first time it's happening in 2021 in August. If you can remember, in 2017, equally 25 NGOs were suspended, including Action Aid and Greece in that category. And this is a build-up. So to me, what does it communicate in a bigger picture? Before we get to that, allow me first visit the history. What are NGOs and what are the mandates of the NGOs in the first place? And are they important in the space of development? All that, I think, yes, NGO is important. First of all, NGOs, these are non-profit making organizations that work to complement the efforts of government. And they work in different sectors, different areas, and complementing different work of government, right from service delivery to empowerment, to solidarity actions, I name them. And this is because of the mandate that these organizations have. Now, there are different types of NGOs. There are those ones that deal with service delivery. There are those ones that deal with issues of accountability and civic empowerment, and so on and so on. You can mention them. There are those ones that deal with organizing associations, cooperatives, and many others. And these NGOs take different approaches in doing work. Others are advocacy NGOs, others, they take different approaches. Now, when we are engaging with the state or with the government, these different approaches and different fields also determine how we engage with the state. For example, how an NGO working on rights approaches relating with the state is quite different from an NGO that is providing purely service delivery, would engage with the state. In that, what do I mean? It's more sticky for the NGO engaging on issues of rights, civic empowerment, and all that, because it touches aspects of empowering citizens, raising their consciousness, waking them up, so that they start demanding for accountability. And accountability in terms of the services and in terms of the actions and inactions by both those in leadership position and those who hold the public portfolios. Now, having said that, it brings me now to analyzing the kind of NGOs that were suspended. If you take a critical analysis of these NGOs, you'll find that most of them are engaging on rights work and engaging on social accountability, that line of engagement. Now, if you link that to the current terrain in the country, and you link it to the period this closure was done, it communicates volume. I take, for example, the closure in 2017. That was immediately after the 2016 general elections. We saw organizations being seized and offices closed. And equipment were taken, an investigation commenced, which report up to now, I'm sure, has not been issued out. I think it would be prudent enough for investigations such as that to be produced to public, showing the raid was informed by ABCD, and after the raid, this is what we established ABCD. And because of this, these are the measures we have put in place moving forward to avert such similar events from happening in future. But even before that is done, we see another set of closure happening. Now we have all the reasons to suspect that it's a kind of witch hunt, because whereas this closure was done in terms of the timing, they're all the same. The 2017 was just 1 year after election, not even a year, some months after general elections. Now 2021, we are just from elections of 2020, of 2021, and you see the closure really happening. So to me, I think there is an underpinning wave driving this, the closure of CSOs, that we need to really have a very candid discussion as government, as CSOs, to see how we can better handle these issues. Because just like my fellow panelist has noted, before you close, there should be processes and there should be procedures that should be followed, including weighing in the contributions the CSOs are making. Take, for example, as a result of the closure, we have seen the human rights defenders coming out, the organization closed. We have seen organizations that used to be very strong in advocating for land rights, they are being threatened. And we have seen also the threat spilling over not only to CSOs, but also to the judiciary. So what does this communicate? In my view, I think the closure is a way of sending signal to the stakeholders working on rights that look here. There are areas you can touch on and the areas you cannot touch on, which ideally should not be that. In a democratic state, every area the citizens should be able to engage in, whether it affects the interest of those in power or not. But the citizens should engage for the sake of the well-being of others. Because it's true, we have women, we have children, we have youth, and we have other vulnerable persons who cannot speak on their own and who cannot be heard, however much they speak. And the only voice they have is the civil society organizations. So to me, the closure was really not informed by the need. Of course, there will be all reasons to justify the closure, but looking at the trail of how events were happening, I don't think those reasons were really valid enough.
Thank you so much, Moses, for that insight and your opinion. We would like to shift to the issues of land, and we will be getting back to the issues of CSOs at a later time. We'll be getting your take on how this has affected your work, and as well as what advice you would give to the suspended CSOs, what a way forward for them. Now, to shift to the land question, as earlier on I stated, there has been a long issues and conflicts when it comes to land in Uganda. And this has long existed. There has been questions on women land rights, recently issues of the absentee landlords versus tenants. There's been the question of outlawing Milo land system, the issues of unregistered customary land, land grabbing, rampant land conflicts, massive land eviction, issues of compulsory acquisition of land by government, dispute occasioned by natural disasters, and so forth. And we would like to get into that discussion just right now. I would like to start right away with Alice. As I stated earlier, Alice operates from Bulisa district, and there has been a number of issues in regards to land that she's going to share with us. But my first question is, what is the community understanding about land? And that is to you, Alice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As earlier on, I'm called Alice Kazimura from Bulisa district. For me, in the Bulisa district, I'm going to talk only about the customary land, because for us here, we don't have those other types of land. So the question is the unsolved land issue in Uganda. My first question is that how does people understand land as a question? In Bulisa here, it took us a long time to understand about land, because we were used to customary land, which was being used communally. It was being used communally. So this issue of coming to our senses to understand about land, it came all about when oil was discovered in Bulisa. So, and when we started to understand the issue of land, some people understood it negatively, because when it came to the issue of land, they understood it that this is only men who own land, not women. So women were left behind for a long time on the issues of land, not until when global rights and other development partners, but mostly global rights, it came in to make people understand, to make the community understand that land is owned by everyone. Everyone is free to own land. That's why even we women, we opened eyes to understand that they can also own land. But it has been a struggle all about, because you see culturally, to change the culture of people, has been a long struggle, and it's still a struggle to make people understand that even women can own land. You see, women were in a very terrible situation, because where they are married, they are told they don't have land there because they never went with the land. Where they came from, where they were born, a land is only for men. So women in Bulisa were just left in suspicion. We thank Global Rights a lot, which has made it clear, which has helped us to clear that women can also own land. It was after when already we had many land issues. Women now started claiming their lands which were already taken. So we have still an issue in Bulisa of unregistered land, because as I've told you, it has been an issue of customary land, communally used, So there came in an issue of unregistered land. We are just struggling to make people register their land, as it is a new thing in the community. And that's why you find that very few that have registered their lands. Those many who have registered it, they are the land grabbers. There's one who have many titles here, Lisa. But most of the people, the community people, very few who have land titles in Ebulisa. We are still struggling. The struggle still continues. We are still struggling to make sure that even our women get titles or land titles. It is not only for men. We are still struggling to see that even our women get land titles. We have another issue also on land, that when the land oil activity started, there was a lot of environmental abuse because land was cleared. A very big chunk of land were cleared, and now they were cleared. Not all the plants were cleared, but they did not plant other trees. And up now, they have not planted other trees. So that land is just open like that, as how it was cleared, and there have been no displacement of planting other trees to other lands. So that's also is becoming a problem. Another problem, unsolved problem, is the land. The land is, we see when these pups, when their lands were taken for these oil activities, they were not compensated in time. But there was that cut-off date that they should not use that land to grow anything. But now they waited for years, they waited for it for years, and they could not grow anything on that land. They could not use that land until now that they are trying to deceive us, that they are now giving food items in spite of that land which is not being used by this time. But remember, the food items given, it is not comparable to the number of the families which we have. The number of the families which we have, you know, people, the community people are used to eating food which we have dug ourselves. But now the land had an issue of the cut-off date, which became a problem to most of the communities. Even our women, whom we are saying that they have, they now know that they have a right to own land and the right to use land. We are still also, they're still also in a question, because the men, it has not come out of their minds. It has not come out of their mind that they have to, now that we are in modern life, they have to live free, the women own their land, except maybe on the compensation of land that we have been shouting for a long time. The global rights people, they know, we have been shouting for a long time. As Kawida, we have been shouting for a long time that compensations of land should not this time bring gender-based violences in families. It should not. Now, out of our shouting, that now these companies are started now training, because we are pushing for training on financial literacy, to how these people will use that money.
Okay, I think you are having a network problem. We can't hear you properly.
Of land, how they we have been, now they have that they train these women, and now these women can get this money with their husband, the land money with their husbands together in the bank.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for delaying sometimes, but I'm called Angole Jane from Dokolo, a women land rights advocate. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Jane, and we welcome you into this talk show. We would like to understand what are the different the causes of the different land conflicts in your community. What is causing land conflicts in your community?
In our area.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The causes of land conflict in our area here is not so much really there, but as my colleague Alice was trying to say, the issue of men trying to say that women do not have the right to own their land is a problem that at times in some places, not all over Dokolo, but in some places you find there are conflict. So that is one of the main reasons causing conflict, causing chaos about land, because like where I was born, they can deny me right from there that I do not have my land there. And where I'm married, also the same story is happening. So if like you're married and you divorce or any misunderstanding comes in, you say you want to go back home. The man can say, yes, you go back. But as you go back, you don't have a plot there. You don't have anything to do there. You even don't have any business you're doing. From there, you have to start from zero. If you have some money, you can go and buy yours. If you don't have money, then you have to stay like as if you've been brought just from somewhere, not at your home. And another thing, when like as I'm married, I'm giving like an example, but it's not happening with me. A man can like decide to say, I want to sell this land. So if he wants to sell it, me as a woman, I have not to say anything about it. As he has decided to sell it, I have to just accept what he's saying and allow him to sell. And after selling, the money you will even spend it the way you want it. I have not to say anything about it, neither advise or plan together with him to work to do something with that money that would bring development to our home. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jane, for sharing with us the causes of the land conflicts in your community. Now, let me go to Pamela. So Pamela would like to get the national perspective. What is causing the different land conflicts in the county?
Thank you so much, Fancy. That's a very big question, and I'll try my best to give that national perspective. What is causing the conflicts in our country on land? There are several factors, but one and major of all is the issue of development versus preservation of the population. What I mean by that is that we are in a time whereby our government is trying to attract investors into the country, and part of their mandate is to ensure that part of the government's mandate is to ensure that they make an enabling environment which can help these investors access land, which is okay. So it is within that context that we are seeing the reported land grabs in many areas of our country, like in Amuru, where you hear that some investor has gone and acquired so many tracts of land and is evicting people because that land is going to be used for maybe sugarcane production or other commercial agriculture. Then, of course, there is the issue of within the different tenure system, like within the customary, we've heard of what is happening between men and women. Men insisting that land belongs to men, women have nothing, and then yet the women are the ones that are farming the land. That is within the context of the community, but it also surfaces in the national legislation and as well implementation of gender responsive regarding women's land rights. We have policies, we have legislation that says women should own land rights, should own land, but you still go and find that there are courts where the rulings are against women in a court case. Then we have the issues of systems that are not operational. Yes, we have a land policy in place, we have a Land Act in place, we have a constitution, very clear on some of the things that should or should not be done. But when it comes to implementation, you find that the very agencies that are supposed to be watching over and taking responsibility to ensure that land transactions are done transparently, that land transactions do not cause conflicts, are not operating, including the courts, including district land boards, area land committees, procedures are not being followed on the way things are supposed to be done. If you talk about Bulisa and land being grabbed from communities, it's a matter of procedures not being followed, or probably things like land for constructing a road by UNRWA, land for electricity poles by UMEME, land for, yes, exploitation of minerals and oil and petroleum. You find that provisions in our national legislation and policy framework are not being followed. They're not being implemented. That is where all these land conflicts of different kinds at different levels, from the national, subnational to the community level, are emanating from. So that is my perspective on the land conflicts in Uganda. And for that reason, I believe that once we get back to those nice policies we've written, once we get back to the legal framework, it is not perfect, no, but once we get back to it and begin to implement even just a quarter or 50% of it, a lot of the land conflicts we are seeing in Uganda will have reduced by a very great magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Now I'm moving to Moses. Moses, we would like to delve into the most recent issue regarding land. That is the issue of Milo land, absentee landlords versus the Vibanja holders. Now, my question to you is, do you think there is a problem with the Milo land system in Uganda?
Yeah, thank you, Fancy. Actually, before this interaction, I was engaging a friend on a similar on the same topic, asking whether the current statements happening, it's really worth being made by prominent persons in government. But he also gave me his opinion, which was subjective. But I think what I'm trying to say here is there's a discussion around that, and not only in the civil society space, but also the communities are discussing that. The issue of Milo and the move to propose for the abolition of the Milo tenure system. First of all, we need to understand the history of Milo. And then before Milo, what was it in place? And then right now, what is the way forward? So taking from that perspective, before Milo, it was clear that land was held customarily among the different ethnic groups of Uganda. In Buganda, in Ankole, and other parts, land were held under customary tenure. And there were systems in place to ensure that the governance and administration of this land was very clear. Issues of succession, issues of allocation, and all those other rights were well catered for within the cultures of the Baganda. But when the colonialists came in about 1888, that's where the conflict started, which resulted into the Uganda Agreement of 1900. So the Uganda Agreement was a significant land reform that happened at that time. And it was driven mainly by the political motive. And that was to award the king, the chiefs with the land, as far as they can expand the British rule in Uganda, which happened. And this destabilized the setting in Buganda particularly. And that's why we also discuss and say this particular Uganda agreement was one of the land injustices that happened, one of the historical injustices that happened. It destabilized the region, it dispossessed the people, imposing landowners, and then creating new relationships in terms of the Busulu, the Nvujo. As you can follow through, it led to an enactment of a law in 1928 to see how to manage the relationship between the landowners and the occupants. So the Milo tenure system has got its long history of injustice. Actually, the original Bibanja holders are the original landowners. And by the fact that the allotment under 1900 agreement was done to persons with the influence of power, the king and the chiefs, it dispossessed these people. The only rights that were retained at that time was access to roads, access to water, and so on. But in terms of the ownership rights, the original landowners were dispossessed of such rights. And the rights vested into those who held the Milo titles. The reforms continued until the 1995. And then from there were attempts to rectify some of this relationship. Of course, with the amendment of 2010 in the Land Act, it tried to define who a bona fide and who a lawful occupant would be. But all that, to me, didn't settle the issue. Why? Because the issue of ownership still remained unresolved. And most of the things bringing conflict on Milo are those relationships. The absentee landlords who hold huge chunks of land with a number of occupants. Now, it even poses a very big challenge when it comes to development. Recently, you had when the investor who invested in Kalangala, the oil palm, when they came, they testified that they'd never seen this kind of tenure where you have to compensate the landowner who is absentee landlord, those who are on the land, like the occupants, and those who are claiming other rights. So this in itself speaks to the fact that there was an injustice that caused multiple layers of rights on Milo, which needs to be sorted. And how can this be sorted? It was well articulated in the Constitution and the Land Act, the Constitution for the Land Fund. And the purpose for that land fund was to buy off the interest of the landlords, of the absentee landlords, and then settle the occupants so that the layers is reduced to one layer of rights other than those multiple rights. But here the challenge now comes in the implementation of the land fund. What has it been able to achieve since it was instituted? What I know that in Ankole, the land fund worked well, and that's why we have very minimal issues of disputes in that region, because the land fund was utilized quite well in that region. But when it came to Uganda region, I think the issue was different. It was politicized, and the issues of corruption in the land fund also came in, and because of that, everything didn't move on well. But right now, in what I think the Milo system in itself doesn't have any problem. The tenure is clear and the rights are clear under that, and its administration is fairly stronger than the current administration of the customary land, which I think government should build on that, but only check on these areas where we have gaps, especially on the implementation of the other components that have been articulated in the Constitution, in the Land Act, but also in the National Land Policy. Moving to abolish, in my opinion, I think would create unnecessary tension politically, but also socially. But the other thing also is that we shouldn't forget that the Milo was supposed to be implemented within the cultures of the Baganda. And this is, I think, what makes it very unique from other tenures. this issue of Mvujo, of Busulu, that were abolished, they're still coming up. They're still prominent. Recently, when we had the Land Awareness Week in Mitiana, Mubende, Kasanda, and Chankwanzi, the issues of Mvujo we witnessed. Though they are doing it informally, but you would find occupants taking Mvujo to their landlord on the basis of a very good understanding and good relationship. Maybe that is an area we need to also focus to study, that why was it abolished at that time, and yet it's coming back this time as something that is working. To me, that should inform the current process of the review of the Land Act. Mvujo works, and how it used to work by then was on the basis of good relationship, on the basis of appreciation. I appreciate the landlord for good relationship and for the understanding we're having. That was the basis of Mvujo, which I think makes sense up to today. Maybe finally on that, I also need to talk about the issue of the different categories of persons who are settled currently on the Milo. We have that category called the Bonafide Occupants, and these are the people who are settled and remained even after the Busulu and the Mvujo law was repealed. And then we have the lawful occupants. So there's another category that doesn't fall in these two categories. The lawful and the bona fide have been catered for under the Land Act. But there's this category, they are not the lawful and they're not the bona fide. They are settled, and the massive evictions happening is both to the lawful, bona fide, and this other category who are not recognized. Now, there were attempts by the judiciary and the Ministry of Lands to come up with a national guideline on lawful eviction, how eviction should be done. Because what we witnessed was that evictions were done in the night, very early in the morning, when it was raining, and so on, where a number of rights were violated. So the judiciary came up with a draft guideline on eviction and presented to cabinet. And at the same time, also the ministry presented, and the cabinet could not proceed. They were sent back to harmonize those documents. In 2019, up to now, and nothing has come out. And yet we continue to see evictions happening day in, day out. So to me, these are some of the areas that we need to focus on instead of tailoring our discussion on whether the Milo is evil or not, and so on. We are already here. We need to move forward. So I think moving forward, we need to focus on safeguarding and also ensuring that when evictions are done, it has to be lawful. And it can only be lawful when there are standard guidelines to be followed. Secondly, we need to focus on issues of how we can effectively utilize the land fund, because this interest can be bought. Finally, we should avoid issues of politicking when it comes to the issues of Milo. The politicking comes from the Mengo establishment saying, well, once government buys this, they will have destabilized the power base of the Mengo, which I think shouldn't really be a major discussion at this point, in my opinion. What should be done is that we have the Milo under the kingdom, and we have the private Milo. Still, the Milo under the kingdom will remain with the powers of the Kabaka and generating income for the kingdom, but let this other private Milo be bought, like those ones that were given to the family of the chiefs. Let them be bought. For example, we have, during the allotment, we have 1,000 square miles that was given to the king and the institution and the families and so on. That one can remain. But we have these 8,000 square miles that were allocated to individual chiefs and individual landlords. That one can be bought.
Okay. Thank you so much, Moses, for that very in-depth discussion on the Milo system. Now, I would like to bring Pamela into the discussion. I can see her hand up. But Pamela, as you present, as you submit, I also have a question for you. Now, on the issue of Milo that Moses just talked about, according to you, what do you think is bringing issues between absentee landlords and the tenants? Because we know this issue came back and was triggered lately due to the president's speech on Heroes Day, where he called this land system very evil, and there is a fear among the population that there's a government move to outlaw this land system. So what do you think is bringing issues between absentee landlords and the tenants on the land? And do you think the solution is to do away with the Milo land system? Yes, Pamela.
Thank you very much, Fancy. Actually, you have brought me in at the point when I just wanted us to reflect on some provisions that are already in place, which if we looked at and tried to implement would help us a lot, even with this land question. The National Land Policy, a government document of 2013 says, the government shall resolve and disentangle the multiple overlapping and conflicting interests and rights on Milo tenure and native freehold, okay? So the government of Uganda, and that includes our president and everybody, has a responsibility to resolve and disentangle the multiple overlapping and conflicting rights. And you're talking about the absentee landlords and the people that are occupying their land. The following is required of government: to promote the principle and practice of land sharing and land readjustment through negotiation between the registered landowner and lawful or bona fide occupant. We can also add what Moses has brought forth as those ones who are not yet catered for under the law. Number two, facilitate tenants on registered or government land to access the land fund to purchase or acquire registrable interests. Number three, establish an administrative mediation committee in districts with predominantly landlord-tenant issues to mediate between the landlord and tenants willing to share the land. Right, we may have an absentee landlord, but that absentee landlord has representatives. They have representatives that can be accessed. Number four, it says set guidelines to adjudicate, mediate, and sensitize on land rights between the occupants and the registered landowners. Number five, purchase the interest of the registered landowner in the land occupied by the occupants using the land fund and sell the interest to the. Now, we have not, government has not done its part of responsibility towards resolving the issue of landowner vis-a-vis land occupant. So if they have not fulfilled that responsibility, it is impossible that the persistent problems that we have had with the Milo tenure can just go away. It is impossible. But if government would begin to address these issues and also to implement what it committed itself to do in the land policy, a government document of Uganda, I believe that some of these issues would be resolved. I wanted to add that Milo land is not the only tenure system with problems. Even customary land has issues. Again, to look at Milo tenure system and its problem and confine yourself within a particular geographical region, that is central Uganda, while you're not querying it and its operation in other parts of Uganda where it also applies, that also creates a problem. What am I saying? That the approach to all this problem solving must be with a level head, must be with due consideration of the different stakeholders. For instance, if we want even the issue between the absentee landlords and tenants to be resolved, both the occupants and the landlords should be brought together. And the land policy says negotiation. How many, I may have forgotten or don't know, how many events, activities have we seen that have been undertaken to bring these two on board and to facilitate the negotiation? I don't know of any. So to just stand up and make an utterance or a directive, it will not solve anything. And even if government came out today with an order and said absentee landlords leave people to stay on their land, it will not happen. And Moses has just given an example. They abolished Mvunjo. People are busy paying Mvunjo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Pamela. We would like to move a little bit away from the issues of Milo land, which I'll come back to it at a later stage. Let me have Alice in the discussion. So Alice, later on you shared with us the different land conflicts in your area. I would like to understand how are these issues being solved?
Thank you very much, Fancy. Before I tell you how these issues have been solved, I would first, because also I've talked much of Maryland and left the issues of customer land. For us here in Bulisa, because we have different conflicts in different communities, and for us here with the customer land, the most important issue is compensations. People agree about the compensations. Another issue is unregistered land. Because the land is meant to be communal, so people to bring the conflict because doesn't have title. Another issue is those laws and things which are put there and not implemented. For example, the land ordinance. A land ordinance in some districts, we find that they are not put in place, or they are put in place, they are not implemented. So that's also conflicts because people doesn't know what is entailed in the land ordinance. You have asked me how are those or some of these issues being solved. One, they are being solved because of a lot of issues. Because most of the NGOs, most of it, they will find that they are working on issues of land. As Moses said that these NGOs are very important because they are playing a great role. So we are just putting people in engagements, reaching people so that these land conflicts have decreased because from the beginning, at the beginning, there were a lot of land conflicts. They were because of the issue of oil development, the land and fragmented people, and more so the rural people. We are not able to see those abundance of money. So this is money. The compensations which are paid by the oil developments, you find that there's a lot. So when people are not sensitized, and so when people are not told, you find that there will remain a lot of conflicts in families, in communities, and in homes. So that's why the agents were doing a lot to see that we have a lot of decisions on land, both general and the women on land. That's what we are doing. Even these oil companies are trying. They're trying. For me, I say they're trying because they just come because they're in their modalities. See that they have to talk to people, so they also try and come and talk to people. That's what I can say about now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Let us have Jane. So Jane, how are the different issues related to land being resolved in your community?
Thank you so much once again. The issues of land conflict in our area here has been solved as the NGOs come in they like train people, and as like for example me who has been trained by Uganda Land Alliance, we are training these other people. So I see there is some improvement. They are no longer struggling over land so much, and even they are understanding that really women are supposed to own land. Even ladies from their homes, they're supposed to have at least some part. Even though they don't have a bigger plot, they can give them like a smaller plot that once maybe they fail from their homes, they go back there and settle there for the start of life. Because if like you're leaving your home, you go without anything, but when you reach there, you have to get somewhere to start from. Secondly, the cultural leaders, they're also understanding, because I hear most of them these days, they say, even if you have only ladies, you've given birth to only ladies or girls, not boys, you have to give them at least some plot. If you have like 2 gardens or 3, you have to sacrifice one and give to them. Even though they will be married, they will go somewhere, you have to leave that one for them, so that when like they come back, or when like anything happens from where they are going, they come back and resettle there. And next, the religious leaders also as well. Once they hear of the conflict, they go there, they talk to the people, those ones who have the conflict, they resettle them, and I see there is some good improvement now in our area here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jane. I'm moving to Moses. So, Moses, do you think it's time to amend the law? And do you think it can be a solution to the land conflicts in Uganda?
Thank you. Definitely. There's some laws that need to be amended, especially the ones that are obsolete and they don't speak to the current context. One in question is the Land Acquisition Act of 1965. Yeah, the dynamics have changed since then, and the context is different right now. So we need to factor in issues of development, issues of investments, and how a land acquisition can be handled. So that law requires to be amended. Then also the Land Act. Yes, the Land Act should be amended. Why? Because as in the flow, how the legislation should flow is from the Constitution. You need to have the policies articulating how the constitutional provision would be implemented, and then from the laws you come from the policy you come now to the acts of parliament, and then the regulations coming down. If you look at the Land Act, the Constitution came in 1995. The Land Act came in 1998, and the National Land Policy came in 2013, which is a reversed gear. Actually, it should have been the Constitution and the National Land Policy following, and the Land Act. That's why the current Land Act has gaps, specifically in terms of actualizing a registration of customary land. Whereas the National Land Policy talks about evolution of customary land and all these tenures being at par, the Land Act is speaking otherwise. The Land Act provides for conversion of customary into freehold in terms of registration, which ideally disadvantages the customary land tenure, and it indicates that they are not at par. So that provision has to be amended. Then there are a number of laws relating to environment, mandates of the different institutions in terms of management and administration of the natural resources. I think we need to get back to the policies and align the laws to speak to the policies. Even on my law, the policy articulated very clearly. But now, in terms of the Acts of Parliament and in terms of establishment of institutions, maybe this is where we require critical input as CSOs to see that we support government to come up with the legislation that will reduce on the land conflicts. And the other one that is being reviewed is the Surveyors Registration Act. And there are discussions that if land registration is being hampered by high costs of survey, why can't the government get back that aspect of survey and regulate? Because that's the biggest problem. And that's why up to now, we only have less than 20% of the land in Uganda registered. The efforts to increase the registration, like if you look at the projection of the NDP3 is talking about increasing the registration by 30% in the next 5 years, and then so on like that. But there are efforts through CCOs being done by the Ministry of Lands, by the CSO partners supporting, but this is not yet enough. There are more reforms that have to be done. So in my thinking, legal reforms, yes, have to be done to salvage, but also enforcement has to be strengthened. Anti-corruption laws have to be enforced. Issues of speculation have to be dealt with, because for sure we have speculators who are people in the government. They know information where government projects will be passing, so they move ahead of government. They go and purchase land there, and now when government is coming to put the projects, they hike the compensation. All these issues are to be dealt with. Somebody raised the issue of the cutoff dates. Logically, how do you pronounce the cutoff dates and you fail, and you go ahead and approve livelihood restoration programs, and you still allocate money to buy relief items for those people buying food? Why not to move straight and compensate and let those people go and resettle wherever they want to resettle? That money being allocated for buying food, for buying what, is adequate to compensate people. So why can the compensation be fast-tracked as per the provisions of the Land Acquisition Act, which provides for prompt, adequate, and fair compensation prior to taking of the possession of land? So to me, I think these are issues to be strengthened, and we need to ask CSOs to popularize issues of registration of customary land. Why do I say so? It will reduce on the conflict. Much of the conflicts we have on customary land is because of the dynamics of the communitization of land coming. The CCOs I'm talking about are the family CCOs, where everyone is included, not individualized, because you can acquire CCO as individual or in association with others or as a family. So as PELAM, we emphasize family CCOs. Because we're issuing family CCOs, you are still respecting the dynamics of the communal and collective ownership of land. Secondly, these disputes are not arising out of land grabs and so on. They're arising because of unclear boundaries. So once you register your land formally, the boundaries will be very clear and demarcated. And by that, the conflict would significantly reduce. Finally, what is also causing conflict is a rampant sales of land, indiscriminate sales of land. People sell land at the drinking joint, in their parties. They're transacting land. They pick deposits even when they're taking beer. They say, "Hey, first give me this the deposit, and the rest we shall conclude from home." You see that? So all that can only be avoided when there are systems in place, when the land has been registered, and people know that for you to sell this land, you first have to go through a process of doing a subdivision. You first have to cut the portion you are selling from the main title, and then you proceed with the sales. So in that case, we would have curtailed this issue of bar sales and so on. But also there's a problem at district level where due to corruption, people sit and since most of these lands are unregistered, they plot the coordinates from the offices, and they pick the coordinates and they go ahead, they process land titles. And these people go on ground with land titles, evicting people. So I think this also should be checked among the other things we are engaging with. But as I conclude, I still advocate with other CSOs that there's need for establishment of the customary land registry. It is long overdue. We need to have this registry articulating how the customary land will be effectively managed as per the aspirations of the National Land Policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. For the participants who have joined us for this talk show, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat. If you have any suggestions, please type them as well. I will read contributions here, and I'll be able to. Now, let me move to Mela. My question to you is in regards to the compulsory acquisition of land by government, which is one of the issues that have brought problems in this country. As we know, government can compulsorily acquire land under the constitution, that is Article 37 as well as Article 26 of the Constitution. But we have seen this, it has been received by reaction by the public. We saw in Amuru district where there were people who undressed, and then as well we have seen violent evictions that has been coming from the side of government. How best do you think government can handle the issues of compulsory acquisition of land?
Thank you, Fancy. How best do I think that the government can handle the issue of compulsory acquisition of land? Before I get to that, and maybe it is related to that, I wanted to make a comment on the issue of registration of land. As CSOs, we have been promoting land registration with support from development partners, and we have promoted a certificate of customary ownership in relation to the issue of land grabbers who are usually speculators working in the government that know that the government is going to pass a road through this place. They go buy large chunks of land and grab land from those people. Even as we continue to promote registration, until we have dealt with that evil of speculators buying land and registering it before the community has registered theirs, we are still going to deal with the ugly sins of land evictions and just land evictions. And for that, it is basically we Ugandans having a heart and considering our people. That is something that you cannot put in the law or anything. It's something that Ugandans, especially those who are in government, thinking about the population at large. So I wanted to raise that. If you notice, even freeholds here in Kampala, a lot of people have freehold titles, but you find that there are multiple titles on the same piece of land. So here we are telling the community, register your land, and maybe they will be successful in doing so, but still somebody else has another title on the same piece of land. So that points to the fact that even the system of the land registration as it stands, for instance, under freehold, it is not good. It needs to be overhauled. Related to the compulsory acquisition of land, I will go back to the issue that I raised from the very start, that we have very clear guidance on how land should be acquired. Fair, adequate compensation prior to acquiring this land. What government has been doing is to do the opposite. They want to acquire the land, then compensate. And of course, they are bringing in issues of saying, okay, some people want to be overcompensated vis-a-vis the land that they have in place. But when you look at the capacity within the ministry to even handle compensation, that capacity is wanting. In the ministry, we have one government valuer at the top and several others in between, but they are still not enough. Because if you're having multi-billion road constructions, umeme infrastructure development projects, how fast enough can these people work to be able to get out there, value the land? The moment the master plan is out that we are going to have a road, a highway coming from Gulu straight to Mbarara, how fast is the resource within the ministry to go out and do adequate valuing of land from Gulu all the way to Mbarara, so that they're able to determine the compensation and therefore what budget the government needs to meet the compensation. So I believe that even within the ministry, within the agency that is supposed to handle the compensation, we don't have capacity. If government can solve that, it should be in a state to handle the compensation, because government is trying to run away from that expenditure. That is why they say, well, we are the ones to decide how much money we'll give you, and we'll do that after we've taken the land. No, if you had valuers that can go forward and value that land that you need to acquire in order to do the public road, the public electricity infrastructure development, then you're able to plan for it, put it in your yearly budget and say, we will need so much money for this road, for this infrastructure development. We don't see that happening. That is one. Secondly is also the overhaul of the system. Thirdly, and related to what I said, those speculators, when they demand for compensation, they don't demand like an ordinary person in the village. It is hiked way higher than the actual value of the land. So government finds itself in a fix. But if you have a system that ensures that land is being compensated to the actual owner within the local region, you'll find that even the cost of compensation comes down. And then lastly is the fact that fair, adequate compensation before moving. We have seen actions of government spending money to go and acquire land somewhere else to resettle the people, establish even a resettlement, whatever. That money should be instead given directly to the people that you're trying to move. I have an example, Chakaboga Resettlement Camp. It is in Hoima district. They moved people from Kabale sub-county and brought them to Buseruka, where that camp is. And there's a large chunk of land. They are supposed to give them a land, construct a house on it, give them a title, and they also give them land for farming. By the time you're able to acquire all that, isn't that money useful, or isn't it possible to save money to do fair and adequate compensation before moving the people? So you see that government has opportunity to do things right, but for some reason, things are not being done right. So we appeal to the government to cancel itself and begin to do what it's supposed to do. It will deal with a lot of the residual effects that it is trying to firefight. Most of these things are really coming out of the inaction or misaction of the government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. I can see Moses' hand is up. Moses, you can submit in 2 minutes on that, and then we move to Alice.
Just to add on what Pamela has noted, the issue of valuation, yeah, we appreciate government is already doing something. It's not that they have sat. They're also doing something, and among the things we commend, it's about the digitalization of the land information system, which is still in progress. The decentralization in form of the ministry zonal offices. We have about 21 ministry zonal offices running, which is good, but they need to be fully functional in terms of staffing, in terms of equipment and all that, and in terms of financing, they have to be fully running. But also within the ministry, we have been updated that the valuation function is being considered under the new bills coming. It will be established as a directorate in itself, getting budgets, not the way it used to be under land management and so on. So that should be in position to address issues we are grappling with in terms of valuation and so on. But even that, the district land board in determining and setting the annual values should be activated. I'm not sure we have very recent values fixed by district land boards. Yet the law stipulates that they should be annually reviewing the value of the different property, of the crops, of the structures and other developments. So this would aid compensation because there would be a standard across. But this provision was not implemented due to the capacity, I think, and government can focus on that. And then finally, there's this issue of scattered compensation in the ministries, in the agencies. For example, when UNRWA is doing compensation, they have different rates. When UEDCL, the electricity distribution, the transmission, something, when they are also valuing, they have different rates. When the National Waters and Sewage Corporation, they are valuing, they also have different rates. Now, when the Ministry of Lands is also valuing, they have different rates. So why are we having all these rates differently? Yet we can have one entity doing valuation for government and cuts across all agencies, ministries, and departments. So that the issue of valuation is standard. And this would curtail the issues of corruption and speculation. And then finally, there is the land acquisition, resettlement, and rehabilitation policy that is in draft, the LAP. How I wish government could fast track this and have it out, because it would articulate how compensation should be done and manage, how the committees will be prepared, how the evaluation will be done, but also the modes of rehabilitation. It will speak to the issue of the housing or the alternative land when you're resettling people, and so on and so on. All those different mediums will be captured under this policy. So I think we need to also drum up the fact that this policy should be fast-tracked and passed by cabinet. And that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can see Pamela is stating in the chat that one agency should do the valuation and the rest should pay, and she agrees with Moses. Okay, thank you so much, Moses, for that. Let me move back to Alice. So Alice, we are now at a solution stage in our discussion. What do you think should be done so that these land conflicts end in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Panthe. What should be done to end these land conflicts? One is the government or the company should have timely, fair, and adequate compensations. That is already a solution. Two, this land conflict to end in Uganda, there should be timely court resolutions, because you find that when you go to court, cases finished there 10 years and above. There should be timely court resolutions. And three, these mediations which we are doing should be respected, and then should be they should be timely, and it should be for the people. And then I could say that what can finish these conflicts also, if the land ordinances, like for example, as in this local government, land ordinances could be implemented. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. I'm moving to Jane. Jane, on your end, what do you think should be done to end the land conflicts in Uganda? Yes, Jane. Okay. As we wait for Jane, let me move back to Moses. So Moses, what do you think should be done so that the land conflicts in this country can come to an end?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I think information is power. We need to empower the landowners with information on the different rights, so that with the information, they can support the various institutions to function well. For example, they can support the area land committee, the district land board, to function at that local level. So information dissemination and education and awareness raising should be paramount. That's to me one. Secondly, following that, we need to strengthen the capacity of these institutions at the district land board and the area land committee that deal with the first line land administration matters. And this capacity should go into analyzing how the area land committees are appointed and how the district land board are appointed. Because we have very good laws up here, but the practice down there. For example, let me tell you just how most of these area land committees, the chairpersons and the members, they're appointed. They're supposed to be proposed by the council and approved at sub-county level. So what usually happens is that you find those who are actively participating in the politics, in the elective politics, like the campaign managers for sub-county chairpersons, or maybe this other one here and there. They're the people who mostly find their way into these appointments of the area land committee and the fiscal planning committee. Why? It's being used as a reward tool at that local level. I think we need to revisit the mode of appointment of this frontline structure, because even if you train them, you do what? If the selection, if that the identification was originally skewed, it means they have a purpose with which they're coming there. And what is this purpose? Is reward and getting financial benefits from those offices. So you see corruption coming in, extortion of money coming in. So I think that should be dealt with at the basic level, at the local government level, that should be dealt with. After the capacity building, I think the institution should be capacitated with adequate budgets. It's very unfortunate that whereas the land unit generates income for the running of the districts in terms of local revenues, much of this income is not plowed back into the sector. So I think this is the right time. We call upon local governments to plow back the local revenues generated by the lands office to the lands office to support the activities in terms of sensitization, in terms of capacity building and all that at that very local level. Then finally, we need to apply and enforce the current legal frameworks impartially, not selective application of the laws. We know the laws governing evictions. We know there are laws governing registration of land, but some of them, they applied selectively. Some people come in 1 month, they've acquired their leasehold title or their freehold title. Others, it takes 5 years. Now, what's the basis of that? There should be equal application and enforcement of these laws, regardless of whether somebody is rich, is poor, is a male or female, or whatsoever categorization you can think of. There should be justice. And finally, the land acquisition law should be amended to bring on board the new dynamics and not to remove the aspect of the prior compensation. That is very critical. The prior compensation should remain, other components of dealing with speculators, of dealing with the management of funds and so on can be dealt with. But that aspect which has been enshrined under Article 26 should be preserved and guarded. So this is what I think. But also there is that other arm of the cultural and the traditional institutions. They should also be, their capacity should be enhanced, because the national land policy talks about government making deliberate effort to strengthen the capacity of the traditional and cultural institutions, especially for land management of the customary land. I think this should not be overlooked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Moses, for that. Let me move to Pamela. So Pamela, what do you think should be done in order to end these different land conflicts in Uganda?
Thank you very much. Concerning the things that should be done in order to end the land conflicts in Uganda, I have the following proposals to make. Number one, with regard to Milo land, the National Land Policy, a document of government, provides a solution to the land question of Milo, because that issue is not new. So we as CSOs, appeal to government to fulfill its obligation and to be exemplary and follow due process in all that it does. Even if government decides that they want to abolish the Milo land tenure system, follow due process, because there are so many stakeholders involved. People that have Milo land titles in banks, those are stakeholders. The absentee landlords, the land occupants. Follow due process, let there be extensive consultation. And related to that is that Milo is not the only land tenure system that has problems, even customary, even freehold. In Kampala here, you can find one piece, one plot has so many titles attached to it because there's a problem with the system of the registration. So we need government to undertake a comprehensive review of the entire land laws and also the systems that manage land and administer land in Uganda, and come up with something that works. And undertaking that review or reform process, it should not be it should not be top down, you know, directives, do this, this must be done. No, it has to be bottom up through principles of negotiation, principles of engagement. For instance, in the GBV sector, there has been an effort to eliminate gender-based violence, specifically intimate partner violence, husband beats wife. But there is a customary grounding or rooting for husband beating wife. There are ethnic groups like the Csos that believe that if your husband does not spank you or batter you, he doesn't love you. And we had a conversation with somebody recently, and they confirmed the genesis of that belief. They say that when a husband loves a woman so much, he's always worried that some other man will take over that woman. So he ends up, that anger, that jealousy, gets him to a position of having to batter his wife. Now, it's so difficult to get rid of that culturally woven practice unless you bring on board the men and they begin to see the dangers in violence against their partners. Then they will transform. And that will apply to Milo land, it will apply to customary land and any other tenure. With Milo land, which has cultural connections, Moses said that it works because there's appreciation between the occupant and the landlord. We have to get these people on board. We cannot just stand up and give, even if there's a law today, it will not solve that problem. So that will bring about sustainable change. Change that will happen today and will be sustained for years, and we'll never go back to a situation whereby a new government comes and says, oh, let us restore the Milo land. You get? Then the other issue, which is second last, is moral. As a people in Uganda, there is a very high level of moral decay, whereby people think just about themselves and developing themselves and their families. They don't care about anybody else. But I assure you that none of us can live without another person. You may have a lot of money, but you won't be able to scrub your backyard or to scrub the pavements in your rich hood somewhere in Kabalagala or Kololo. You need this poor boy from the village to come and wash that place for you. That shows how important poor people are to the guys that are big there. So my recommendation is that these people, these guys in government who are speculating, going to places, buying large chunks of land and dispossessing unjustly the indigenous people, sincerely, just console yourselves and have a bit of humanity to consider the other people. Why? Because you find that these guys process land titles very fast, while the poor people, the process is very lengthy, very costly. Sometimes they're giving up along the way. Other times they don't even try at all. But even if they do, this other title has come before theirs, so they'll still lose land. So these are moral issues, and we Ugandans need to sit down with ourselves and begin to be responsible for our country. The last point is on community level engagement. It has to be strengthened. CSOs, we have done our best, but you know that CSOs, we are also constrained by these periodic fundings. Sometimes we have money, sometimes we don't have. We start projects, we end them in the middle. We do half-baked, we do a sub-count, we do a village. You're not covering an entire area. But the issues of women's land rights, children's land rights, those are things that are still persisting, but we need to strengthen community engagement. Why? Because most of these things are embedded within the cultures where they believe a child cannot inherit their parents' property. Somebody in the clan has to manage it for them, or a woman cannot take over her husband's property. Her brother-in-law has to take over. Those are things of community engagement for which we need a lot of money. We need government on board. We need government to support CSOs instead of suspending them. And then finally, I'd like to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to share and to specifically call upon government to improve on the way it does what it does, because it is so much is in its hands for the things that are happening right now. A lot is on their side. If they could change it, things would be different. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Before we move to the closing remarks, I would like to give still Moses and Pamela. I would like to give Moses and Pamela 2 minutes each to discuss the issues of the CSOs. Now, Moses, to you, how has the suspension of the CSOs affected your work? And secondly, what advice would you give to the suspended CSOs?
Yes, thank you. In terms of how it has affected our work, yes, we don't work solely as Pelham. We work through partnerships, and these partners, some of them include those CSOs that have been affected. But also in terms of funding, resource mobilization for the work, some of these CSOs that were closed, we are supporting partnerships, coalitions and alliances in terms of funding, in terms of technical support, but also in terms of strategic alliances. So all this has been affected in one way or the other. We have a number of CSOs that have reduced their operations. For example, because of the suspension of DGF, it has had a significant impact on the land rights work, especially also where we had products for pro bono, where we had the products for community sensitizations on land issues, but also I think within the jails of government, they have been significantly affected. So you can see that the impact is not only on the NGOs, it spreads and spills even to government. I'm sure the services that the jailers was providing to the prisons, to the inmates, has been greatly affected because this has been the area where government was reluctant to allocate resources. And most often, there are these areas that the NGOs come to cover. Why? Because they're necessary. Much as the state is reluctant to focus there, the CSOs come. So these are the areas that have been most affected. And moving forward, I think the closure or the suspension of these CSOs should strengthen us more, should strengthen our compliance, should strengthen our resolve to continuously empowering the communities and working within the available legal frameworks. We should do compliance in terms of finance. We collaborate with the Finance Intelligence Authority to leave no stone unturned, because where your house is not very clean, anything can happen and things can be taken advantage of. Yeah, whereas we believe that some of the reasons advanced were valid, but they were not justifying enough for the actions that were taken. Yeah, there could be some CSOs that didn't comply. Yes, it has not started today. It has been on record even before this long history of CSOs. But the timing and the speed back.
Is it me or this has a problem?
CSOs, which I think we need to further strengthen that and remain in solidarity. But also, we shouldn't shy away from speaking on behalf of these CSOs that were closed, associated with their products. I think it's important. Yeah, because whereas there may be one or two issues here, but doesn't mean the higher products, because there's a discussion that, okay, since DGF was closed, or since this other NGO was suspended, therefore their products cannot be used. I think their products remain useful. If there were posters that they developed, if there were analysis that they did, we should continue using it and advancing the cause that they've been doing, believing that others will be rectified. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Pamela, there is a fate of 54 NGOs that are undecided. So how has this affected your work, and what advice would you give to them?
Thank you, Fancy. Concerning how the closure of the 54 NGOs has affected our work, what I observe right now is that this has opened a door for some elements in our local governments to harass those other CSOs that are still operational. And yet, many CSOs are struggling as a result of the COVID-19 and the lockdown related to it, in terms of having no funding or gaps in funding, which may relate to the reasons why government, the reasons that are forwarded by government, things like you're not, submitting your returns or audited reports and all that. So what I see is that it has opened a door for some elements within government to actually harass even those that are still operating. It has also reduced the partnership For instance, if you're a consortium of 50 CSOs and 30 or 40 of them are affected, or let's say 50% of them who are your members have been affected, it definitely will affect your level or your mass, because there is a strength in numbers. So that your lobby and advocacy can be really affected negatively, especially when the ones that are close within that partnership are the ones that have been moving and shifting things and influencing policy and legal advocacies. Of course, it has also created fear, as Moses has pointed out. You find yourself being very careful not to step on the feet of somebody in government, because you may be the next one to be closed down. And yet there are pertinent issues that we as CSOs, NGOs have to put to government, because that is our mandate, that is our work. So you find that more and more CSOs will be speaking in fear, will be speaking with reserve, just because they could be closed down just like the others. So that is how this closure has affected not just individual organizations, but us all in the civil society fraternity. And so even the recommendations that I would give here would relate generally to all of us in the CSO fraternity, that first of all, we need each other. In the past, we were so many, and we even had those issues of competing, this organization, the other one, I have to show myself as the best, the one in the lead. We can't afford to continue with that. We have to change. We have to work with each other, because now our numbers have been tampered with. Then the other thing is that for those that are suspended, they should not give up. It's not like they've been given a death sentence. Government said we are halting, yeah? And I know an example of an organization whose accounts were frozen, and they had accusations of terrorism, but right now they're operating. Why? Because the organization went ahead to have a one-on-one engagement with the government. So all those that have been closed down, since government has given us technical reasons, yeah, which are valid, let us engage them one-on-one, say, yeah, we have not been having our audited accounts for this and that. Of course, in situations where there are other reasons, we will not be successful. But for all those where, sincerely speaking, these issues were valid, we should go back to government and re-engage them and put the reasons why we were not able to have those things that the government expects us to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pamela. Now we have come to the end of our talk show. I would like to get closing remarks from our panelists. I'll start with Alice. Alice, please give us your closing remarks for today. Yes, Alice, we would like to get your closing remarks.
I say thank you very much, Fancy, from other panelists. I'm very glad today to be among the panelists of this Zoom today. I think this what we have talked about today is of great importance to ourselves and to our country and the CSO that we are operating with. I could recommend that if we could be having such a discussions at time that they could help us a lot, and they could even help other people. Thank you very much. I call it a day, and you're welcome.
Thank you, Alice. Let me get closing remarks from Moses. Okay, let me move to Pamela, then Moses later. Pamela, let me get your closing remarks.
Okay, my closing remarks are that we can change. We can change what is going on in our country by being willing to that necessary. And those actions are like we have to travel to the moon to get them. The solutions are right before our eyes. So the appeal to government, take up your obligation, fulfill it, and then require all of us to do the same. We shall be able to change the land conflict scenery in Uganda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pamela. I would like to extend my utmost gratitude to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for bringing to us this community talk show. I really appreciate it. I would like to thank so much our panelists who joined us today. Today we discussed two topics. The first one being, how has the closure of CSOs affected your work? Our second topic for today has been the unsolved land questions in Uganda. We had 4 panelists who discussed extensively these two topics. We had Pamela Lakidi Achan, who is the Executive Director of Uganda Land Alliance. We had Onen Moses, who is Advocacy Officer at Land Rights at Elam, Uganda. We had Kazimura Alice, who is the Executive Director of Akindo Integrated Women Development Agency, AWIDA, in Bulisa District. And last but not least, we had Angole Jane, who is a land rights advocate in Dokolo District. Thank you so much, our panelists. Thank you so much, those who joined us on this Zoom call and were attending. We really appreciate. And thank you so much, our viewers. Our talk show for today ends here, and we'll meet again next time on the same day. Thank you.